It is my pleasure to introduce our student speaker, Gabe Kolodner. He is an 11th grader from Newton North High School in Newton, Massachusetts. He won a Gold Key and American Vision nomination for his photograph, Insomniac. He also takes photographs for his student paper, The Newtonite, covering events like the Newton teacher strike.
Thank you to Mr. Mayor and Mr. Davis for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you all today. I've been asked to talk about my creative process to a group of some of the most creative people in Massachusetts, which now that I'm standing up here, feels like preaching to the choir. So I'd like to take a step back and talk about what comes before creativity. Opportunity. No one's creativity exists in a vacuum. Do you remember the first piece of art that you created? The first time you picked up a paintbrush, drew, worked clay, picked up a camera, used a computer for digital art. None of us arrived here today without being given the opportunity to create our art. Our loved ones nurtured our artistic passions. Our mentors inspired and directed us. Our teachers challenged us. To those in the room who did so much to encourage us along the way, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you, thank you, thank you. The opportunity to create is not a given. And unfortunately, those opportunities are getting harder to find in our schools. In this age of tightening school budgets, too often the first thing to be cut is arts programs. And with those cuts, there is less time for art for kids in elementary and middle school, and fewer opportunities to develop our work in high school. And in an increasingly regimented high school environment, our art classes have been one of the few places where we can access our creative sides, where we have that opportunity to experiment with different genres and types of art. I've loved photography since I was 13, but I took my first photography class in high school. It is difficult for me to describe how much my photography has improved under the guidance of my photo teacher, Mr. McIntyre. I started high school as someone who loved talking about the equipment more than the photographs the equipment could produce. Mr. McIntyre helped to shift my perspective, encouraging me to focus on photography as art and constantly pushing me to challenge myself in what I chose to shoot. Without art instruction at every level of our schools, without our teachers and mentors, our opportunity to grow as artists is lost. Speaking to my fellow awardees, even if the opportunity to create is available to us, we are often limited by other forces outside of our control. There are tests to study for, sports to play, colleges to visit and apply to, friends to hang out with. Occasionally, we might go to a party. Occasionally. It can be a challenge to find the time, to take the time, to give ourselves the chance to make our art. Like I said before, to sit where you are today means that you are about as creative as they come, and clearly your ideas deserve to become reality. So, when you feel that creative spark, I encourage you to pursue it. On that note, I'd like to tell you a story about my favorite photograph that I entered into Scholastic, a picture of my little sister, Willow. She wandered past my room late at night, unable to sleep, holding tight to her favorite stuffed animal for comfort. She was framed by the light in a doorway, and something about that framing made me remember what it was like to be a young child again, afraid of the dark, unable to sleep, seeking comfort. I wanted to capture that moment, the way she looked, the way the light lit her face, the way it reminded me of my own experience when I was her age. It was exactly the kind of photo I love to take. And I almost did not take it. I was drowning in homework. I had to wake up early the next morning. I was very tired. But as I am sure you can all understand, the idea was too strong to resist. So despite all else, I grabbed my camera, reframed the shot, and asked her to walk towards the light. And then for the record, I helped her get back to sleep. Over the next week or so, I spent a fair share of hours editing that photo. I couldn't quite get the geometry right. The color seemed off, and the perfect contrast required much fine-tuning. At times I got frustrated, and I set it aside. Once I nearly deleted it after I spent an hour carefully reorienting that photo, just to realize that I had moved into the exact same position I had started with. But the idea never left, and I worked through it until the picture in front of me mirrored the picture in my mind. If I had not taken that photograph that night and continued working through my doubts, I would not be up on this stage today. I know many of you aren't photographers, and I know the nature of your art might not be so spontaneous. But we all have ideas, and I'm confident that we have all felt that spark of sudden inspiration, that urge to create that we can't seem to shake despite life getting in the way. As all of us continue to create art, I urge you to make the most of every artistic inspiration and take advantage of every chance you have to use your creativity. Take your shot. You will not regret it. Thank you.